Michael de Jager and Madri Creer, who will be presenting to us the first paper of this session.
Is it on? There we go. Thank you, Mariana. Hi, everyone. As Mariana said, my name is Michael, and with my co-author and co-presenter here, we are going to be presenting our paper along with our co-authors in the audience, Prof. Kerry Lynn Thompson and Prof. Lynn Futcher, who, FYI, is going to be responsible for the Q&A afterwards. But today we want to start a little bit of a conversation about our topic. And our topic is smoke signals, analyzing and decoding, quiet quitting and burnout among cybersecurity professionals. So before delving into everything, we just want to paint the scene a little bit, paint the picture. So through our analysis, we received the following quote, and that is, imagine a firefighter fighting fires for 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day. All the while, people do absolutely nothing to prevent fires and mainly actively throw gasoline on everything they touch. Sprinkle in about 10 new fires started and invented every day, and arson being a very lucrative, low-risk job, and you're painting the picture. I think this demonstrates and really illustrates how crazy and hectic the cybersecurity industry is, and it's ever changing. The threat landscape is evolving every day, so I think it paints the picture quite nicely. So today we really just want to start the conversation on, burnout versus quiet quitting. All of us sitting here are very well aware of what burnout is. It's a conversation that is being held daily. It's all over the media. We hear it constantly, not just in the cybersecurity, field, but in every other field it's starting to become quite prominent. But there's this new trending phenomena that has started since COVID-19 and 2020, and that is quiet quitting. Now, there has been a little bit of misconception or misunderstanding between the two, and we really wanted to delve into the difference, the link between them, and that's really where we want to go with this. So just to briefly explain, what is burnout? So burnout is very much a psychological syndrome characterized by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Now, it is not always your own personal management, but it also comes from higher management and how they deal with your work, your stress, etc. So burnout is really characterized by 3 key components, and we've gone and labeled these as our smoke signals. These are kind of your indicators of when someone's burning out. So if you take a car that's kind of burnt out, it dies along the road, what does it start doing? It starts smoking from the engine part. This is kind of when an individual is starting to burn out, basically. So the 3 kind of smoke signals and the components is emotional exhaustion, which is where one is feeling drained, tired, and lacking of energy. We've got depersonalization, which is where you develop like a cynical or detachment attitude towards your work. And then you have decline in professional efficacy, is where you really start to experience a sense of ineffectiveness, and you feel less valued within your work. But then comes quiet quitting. This is slightly different. There is a fine line between burnout and quiet quitting with regards to terminology. So when we talk about burnout, we talk about detachment. But with quiet quitting, we talk about disengagement, where you detach is where you pull away completely. Disengage is where you start to lessen your activity within your work and you start to withdraw, kind of. So we've basically seen quiet quitting as a way of a protective measurement against burnout. So people are becoming very aware of burnout. They're starting to become worried about it, and they might even start to feel that inkling of those smoke signals coming up. So they start to quiet quit or disengage, or they might find that they're fighting battles within their work environments, as we have spoken about, but they seem to not be successful in their battles, so they decide they no longer want to do it. So it's very much about people doing their bare minimum in their work these days. And I know we can argue the fact that, we are contracted to do a certain amount of works, but there is this attitude that we always want to do more, or there's expected of us to do more than what we're actually supposed to be doing or what we're being paid for. But that's just how human nature kind of works in a sense. But there does come a point where you're doing so much more and you're getting lack of recognition, or there's no value, or there's no joy in the work that you're doing anymore. So you kind of start to disengage from it. And this is starting to become very prominent in many fields, but particularly within the cybersecurity field. And when you start to disengage and you start to withdraw, it reduces productivity. And as soon as we start doing that, your attentiveness to threats or being aware of them or wanting to, defend against them starts to mitigate or starts to pull away. So we sat back and we said, what's going on within the cybersecurity field? What is causing these phenomena to occur? What factors are contributing to doing all this? And there is a lot of literature out there, but it seems to be all over the place. There's no definitive list or definitive, factors that is really saying these are the issues, this is what we should address, and how can we fix these? So, although burnout is very prevalent among cybersecurity professionals, the link between quiet quitting and burnout in cybersecurity and those contributing factors remains largely unexplored. So we decided as the objective for this paper is to identify these various factors that we decided to go with organizational factors, because you get a whole lot more. But really we wanted to look at the organizational factors that are contributing to these onset of these smoke signals relating to quiet quitting and burnout, and we decided to use a sentiment analysis to get people's perceptions on it and their feelings and emotions, and then a thematic content analysis on our data collection. Right, handing over to you.
Right. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Audrey, and I will be taking you through our research process, the data that we collected, how we collected it, and how we analyzed it. So essentially, we went through a 3-step process. So the first step was obviously to do a literature review, to get an understanding of the knowledge that's already out there in terms of what our topic is. And when we had a good idea of what is already out there, we realized, okay, there might be a gap for us to discover something else, something more regarding this topic. So we moved into step 2, which was to collect some data. We basically ended up using a specific subreddit on Reddit called the Cybersecurity subreddit, and we collected some data from that subreddit to analyze. And we used a 3-phased approach for that analysis that basically entails the pre-analysis, the material exploration, and the interpretation. All right, so like I said before, for the data collection, we used the Reddit Cybersecurity subreddit. So we had a specific criteria that we were looking for the study. So we used keywords like burnout or quiet quitting, and we basically narrowed our options down to January 23 and January 2024 for the specific posts within this subreddit that we wanted to look at. We also wanted some sort of engagement on the post. There's no use in collecting posts with no actual conversation or engagement. So we made sure to search them by top rated or filter them by top rated to ensure that there's at least a minimum of 10 comments per post that we are analyzing. So after our search criteria was put together, we decided on it, we went over and we started with our collection. We ended up with 7 postings that we selected from the subreddit, and in total, in these posts, there was about 531 comments that we received via the Reddit API. We made use of Postman to get access to the details, to make requests to the API. And the API response was obviously in JSON format, which we then obviously put in some JSON files, and we processed it using JavaScript. We specifically pulled out information like the details within the post, the title of the post, and comments and replies to those comments within each post. So in total, we did 7 API requests from Reddit, 1 for each post, and then there were 7 JSON files, which we then converted into 7 Word documents that we could analyze with all of the information that we pulled from the API. So for our analysis, to get started, we decided on using Atlas TI as a tool to help us to code and understand the data that we got from Reddit. Okay, so to start that off, we imported the data in our first phase, which is the pre-analysis phase. So within Atlas TI, I was able to import the 7 documents that we generated basically from the API responses, imported it into Atlas TI, and we created memos describing each of the documents, the type of post that was in the document, and we kept memos, generally updating them, keeping them up to date, so you know where you are going. When you're working with a lot of data, it's easy to get lost in it, so it's good to have a good memo that you can look back on and see how you got to where you are now. So after that, we went into phase 2, which was the material exploration. So essentially, when you've got so many comments, there are bound to be comments that are valid, which actually contribute to the study, and there are bound to be comments that are not so great and don't really contribute to the study. So you'll see that we have identified valid and invalid comments. So about 157 of them we considered valid, which add value to our subject. And then we have 374 which were considered invalid. So when I'm talking about invalid comments, this is things like somebody saying, hi. That doesn't add any context or any value to the discussion. So it was moved to the sidelines, and we focused on things that would actually help us discover these possible factors that are influencing and causing this phenomenon in the workplace. Okay. We also did a sentiment analysis. We just wanted to get the general idea. What is the feeling that the people have when you bring up topics like burnout or quiet quitting? What are they feeling? So we did a sentiment analysis. This was also done through Atlas TI with its built-in sentiment analysis feature, and it rated them according to positive, neutral, or negative. So the sentiment scoring system was then applied. Basically, it boils down to a positive rating was given a 1, a neutral rating was given a 0, and then the negative rating was given a -1. So we can score and draw some statistics and make some conclusions regarding that. Then our third phase, the interpretation. So this is where we took all of that data, we merged them together, we identified a bunch of possible factors, and we basically went along working and seeing which of these are similar, which could be a single factor, and we narrowed it down, creating a bunch of smaller, more descriptive factors. Okay. We exported the data thereafter so we can interpret it further. Okay. So, what are the key findings from this analysis? The basics of the sentiment analysis, I think, is quite obvious that it's mostly negative. The feeling towards cybersecurity burnout and quiet quitting is very negative. Secondly, positive, about just under 24%, and then neutral, quite low, only 7%. So from the data that we analyzed, we identified 5 organizational factors that we believe is leading to this type of phenomenon. So number 1, we have work overload. So this had a total of 62 mentions, sorry. So it was mentioned in those 100 and I think it's 57 comments that we had, it was mentioned 62 times as a possibility of what is causing this feeling between the people in the comments, okay? Then we have poor workplace dynamics. There's 55 mentions of them. Cybersecurity skills gap, 51 mentions. High risk, high pressure job, 41 mentions, and continuous upskilling with 26 mentions. So that's it from my side. I'm going to hand back over to Michael for the rest of the presentation.
Okay, before I continue, the one thing I would like to add, because it might be a question that is brought up, what was our rationale behind using Reddit? Firstly, it's open access. You're allowed to grab it and review it and everything. You get brutal honesty. So we could gather information, you got people's true feelings, what they really think, and then we avoided our researchers' worst nightmare, which is ethical clearance, because it's all open access, thankfully. Okay, so from the factors that we found, as Marjorie mentioned, we got those 5 ones there. The first one we got was work overload, and I think we all can say that this is across many different fields, but the cybersecurity professionals saying that they are overworked. They disrupted work-life balance due to demanding workloads. There's this blurred line between professional and personal life, and the way we were able to decipher these factors was through comments that they had. For example, someone said, there's a lot of pressure and a work list I can't seem to ever finish. So this really reflects a lot of systemic issues within the industry. Our second one was poor workplace dynamics. This comes with a lot of lack of managerial understanding and unrealistic expectations. Common frustrations include misaligned priorities and insufficient recognition. So again, comes from a comment like management doesn't recognize the complexity of our tasks. Okay. Then we do have the cybersecurity skills gap, which is also spoken about a lot. And this is due to limited resources and insufficient training investment, misalignment of roles that impacts job effectiveness. We also then have a high-risk, high-pressured job, which is, cybersecurity professionals have to constantly be alert, and they have conflicting task priorities. Something is always popping up, a new threat is coming. They get phoned at like 5 a.m. in the morning to come and fight something, or 2 a.m. in the morning. It's very high risk, high pressured. Stress, through emergency and alert fatigueness. And then lastly, we do have the continuous upskilling. We know as the threat landscape is changing, new technology is being developed, we constantly have to stay up to date as well, and that is quite exhausting on top of everything else that one has to do. So again, persistent demand for professional development, which mainly impacts, personal time, work-life balance, and all of these do impact each other. It's quite a vicious circle. When you're continuously upskilling, it impacts your workload, which then also impacts your high-risk, high-pressure, etc. So there's all this interconnectivity, very much creating that link that we're looking for. So in conclusion remarks, we believe, the contribution that was brought is these 5 organizational factors. They can really help to highlight actionable steps for organizations to address burnout signals. They can take this and see, okay, well, this is happening, how can we manage it better? So as I said, we used the braided, subraided cybersecurity. It comes with its limitations because it's not very structured. You don't get as much demographical information as we want. So, for future research, it would be very nice to conduct a survey to gather this proper demographic. We can see maybe which ages, genders, etc. are experiencing the most burnout, which job roles, is it more administrative or managerial, etc. We also could run a nice systematic literature review to identify trends or look at theories that are contributing to it. And then what could be nice is to run a structured equation modeling, to really hypothesize the link between everything and these factors to see, what's really contributing. So in a closing remark, remember, it only took one overworked cybersecurity pro to save the day and one missed alert to shut down half the world. Let's take care of them before they burn out, takes them offline, secure the human, secure the future. Thank you.
That was a really interesting talk. Are there any questions from the floor? Certainly an interesting topic. Okay, we'll take in the front and secondly at the back. Please proceed.
Maybe a question, maybe a remark. If you look into what happens in SOCs, Security Operations Centers, the number of alerts are so many that they can't process it. They simply go, so we lose a lot there. Did you compare these results? Because what I see there, I see actually in colleagues not even in IT, working next to me. Have you done a comparison, just high level, a lot of these issues, whether it's specific to cybersecurity and our workload or other areas? Oh, I should be addressing to them, right?
Currently looking at other fields and other roles, and that would be something we would take further, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that could be explored in the future. Because obviously we see it now in IT because that's specifically what we studied, but there's no conclusive evidence that it's only in IT. You can, obviously it could be elsewhere as well. So it's a good thing that you can investigate, yes.
Yeah, maybe I just wanted to add, if we obviously looked into the literature, and a lot of those factors actually came from the literature. So it was almost like our little analysis there confirmed what was already in the literature as well. So it's not like there was any surprises or anything really new, but to get that confirmation specifically in the cybersecurity space.
And just to add, so this was sparked, I think, or in part by, we were at a conference last year where there was a studies coming out of Australia where they said that in their study there was a higher rate of burnout in cybersecurity than in healthcare. So it started, it's something we will look at as they delve deeper into it, but it's interesting to see how, any of those high pressure situations, so healthcare, cybersecurity, we're talking about agriculture being on the rise as well. Academia. So it'll be interesting to look at all of that, but certainly a high pressure, because it is experienced by people in any field, certainly, but cybersecurity being very high pressure is where we're going to focus. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Maybe this also adds to the previous two. And if I've missed it, please accept my apologies up front. What is the interface of this study? And there are many studies on information security culture from an organizational point of view. Have you used any of those literature? Or is this completely disjointed in your view?
So we did look at quite a few different literatures out there and what they are saying, how they've tied it all together. And as I think we said, looking at the literature and doing like a thematic mapping across them, we were able to draw links from each one. I think I'm understanding your question.
Yeah, no, I think you understand correctly. But for me, I think there's a wealth of information in cybersecurity, information security culture studies. Adele de Vega and I, for example, did work in that area. And some of those factors definitely overlaps also with what's been done in those studies.
I think that's definitely something, if you look at it, the literature at the end of the day, it definitely highlighted and added onto what we found in the data. So obviously just having the data wouldn't be saying all that much if you don't have the literature also to back it up. I think the main thing for us was the literature kind of felt like we focusing on one thing here, the next piece focus on something else. There wasn't like something that pulled it all together. And maybe that's something that we can look at, like other workplace culture papers and studies out there to also draw some conclusions from them. So it's definitely something we could definitely explore more.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. You can have a seat. Before I announce